listening to Cain, Randy, and Brooke on Scratch the Vinyl.
Scratch the Vinyl.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Scratch the Vinyl. You made it back for another week, and we are always glad that you did. We're glad you guys made the trek with us from the beginning episode all the way through to this point. If you haven't, and you guys are new listeners, we definitely want you guys to check out these new ones, but we would like you to go back and kind of learn the history of Scratch the Vinyl. We've been building up steam, the little music show that could, and the steam engine just keeps rolling all night long, kind of like a snowball, and I couldn't be happier to be on this podcast. So let's get into it right now. He's back, everybody. He's my guy. He's the man, the myth, the legend, the Godzilla of entertainment in this town and many other towns. He was the strong man in the circus for a short stint there, and then he joined the volunteer Navy, maybe saved a few whales and a dolphin. Flipper, if you're out there, we listen to you too. Randy, you're back. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing tremendous. I didn't save any whales, but I did catch the show while I was gone last week, and you did make me laugh a little bit, and kind of made my day, really. And I appreciate you guys so much for holding down the fort while I chase other dreams and things outside of music. But great to be back.
I don't have any other way, Randy. This is the only fort I have to hold down, aside from my home itself. So I was glad to do it.
I haven't seen Brooke in a while either. So, hey, Brooke, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm so wonderful. I'm glad to see you, Randy. I missed you. I saw you like for a second at the bar when you came in to get your stuff, and then all of a sudden you were gone. I was like, "Where's Big P at? I don't know where he's at. Little P's here."
They literally put me right back to work. I landed in Omaha. I drove back. 2 major accidents on the highway. It took like 2 hours. I was exhausted, and of course, our buddy Bradio Radio from Matson's had his birthday, and I had to be the sound guy for his concert Thursday night. And let me tell you what, the Hot Dealers, man, they put on a great show. They did all their original work Thursday night. We had a great crowd down there for Brady's birthday. So just a quick shout out. Happy birthday, Brady. I know he'll catch this episode. It was a great time. Christina on the flute, she's amazing. And the whole band, what a vibe. I love their vibe. Anybody gets a chance to check out the Hot Dealers, they need to do so.
Man, you really are the hardest working man in show business, Randy. I mean, you did all that. You were out there chasing your poker dreams, playing with the big dogs in Vegas, with the World Series of Poker. Then you come back, you're a sound guy instantly when you get back. I mean, you really are the hardest working guy in this town.
Well, I'm slowing down, but if I didn't have you guys to help me, I don't know what else I would do.
It sounds like you weren't doing anything with whales. It sounds like you were wrestling card sharks or something. It is Shark Week, isn't it?
It was Shark Week. I saw that advertising like every day. It was funny. What was funny, it was really nice out in Vegas this last week. Wasn't super hot. However, when I'm out there playing, I don't get outside very much, but the limited time I did, it was pretty nice. I kept getting messages on my phone that you guys were getting major thunderstorms. So I don't know if I was jealous or not.
They were beautiful. They were wonderful thunderstorms. I think that was your iron rod coming down, because you are a superhero as well, correct?
Well, I think Cain always makes you out to be the superhero. I'm just maybe one of the sidekicks. But I know where we're going to go today is that we have an awesome guest. Cain, tell us a little bit who we got on the show today.
We do have another awesome guest. Lincoln, this is another treat for you guys. We have been giving you guys the best in the business, especially here, Nebraska, and really all over. We have given you guys so much talent, and this guy's going to be no different. He is part of the Polley Music Library. He's an experimental musician. He does all sorts of cool stuff. He's a fellow podcaster. Man, what else can I say about him? He has a show on KZUM, and I mean, we might as well just get him on right now. He's done it all in music, and now he's chosen to come on our little show here and talk some more. So let's bring him on. Scott Scholz, how are you doing?
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, I was so glad when you contacted me because you are doing huge things. This kind of scratches an itch for us we're trying to scratch every itch when it comes to the music scene in this town. And you seem to be doing a lot of things behind the scenes that are huge for this town and like shaping our youngsters to be great musicians. And so I was super excited when you had reached out to me and we had kind of bantered back and forth and decided to do the show. So I'm glad to have you on, Scott. I want to ask you right off the bat, musician to musician, I want to dive into the Polley Music Library because I think that that's such a huge thing. Am I saying that correctly, by the way? It is Polley, correct?
That's how I say it anyway. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's correct.
So
Yeah, that's actually why I contacted you too, because I always want to, try to get the word out as much as possible about Polley, because I think there's a lot of musicians in town that maybe still don't even know it exists. And, I just want everybody to get a chance to come up and check it out. And I think there's really cool resources for pretty much any musician in town that they'll find some cool stuff there. Even for people who aren't musicians, I mean, just about everybody loves music. And we have, all kinds of books like histories and biographies for, all kinds of different musicians that, I think there's something for just about everybody really up in the Polley Music Library. So we're up on the second floor of the Bennett Martin Library downtown at 14th and N Streets for anybody who hasn't been there before. It's open every day that Bennett Martin is open, which is every day of the week. I'm off on Sundays and Mondays, but you can be there anytime you want and check things out. And if you need any help with what's up there, come see me anytime, like Tuesday through Saturday.
And you also curate shows there, correct? You also put together different shows and different bills for that?
I do, yeah. So I came on there at about, it was like June of 2019. And at the time, one of the big changes they wanted to make was doing more programming. At the previous person who had run the music library had actually started the music library. She had worked there since like, I think 1981. And retired from there. She generally was doing programming a couple times a year. And the big change that I made is we're doing programming more like once or twice a month at this point. Some monthly things that rotate, like there's a monthly songwriting club that people can come to, basically just talk about whatever music they're working on, maybe get help or feedback from other people, and, hopefully meet some other musicians too, for potential collaborations down the road. Any kind of style is fine for that. Some people bring a guitar, they're singer-songwriters and kind of just play what they're working on. Other people bring like a laptop and kind of just sort of play little snippets of what they're working on that way. YouTube videos of what they're working on, and a little bit of everything really. Some folks are just like kind of working on lyrics and they bring in some of that stuff for feedback. So it can really kind of be anything sort of music related. There's even a few people who just are, again, kind of into music that sometimes just drop by to kind of get a feel for what's going on basically around town. So that's just like the monthly things. As far as events, we have different things, and try to show a little bit of everything that's going on around town. So we've had, like most recently, this last Saturday, we had Smith and Jesson, who are like a free jazz duo from Omaha. Kyle Jesson has been putting out tons and tons of records and like CDs and tapes over the last couple years. He's been reviewed in The Wire, which is kind of like the New York Times for experimental music, basically, which is a really cool thing to be in. And he's doing some great stuff. So it was really fun to have him come down. And him and Phil Smith, the drummer in that duo, are just amazing. They have this fantastic chemistry. And in addition to playing, one of the things that kind of happens with these music library type gigs is they'll kind of stop and talk and take questions from the people who come to see it. And they got into a really cool discussion with the audience that came. There's about 18 people there on Saturday, just kind of talking about what free jazz is and the difference between free jazz and free improvisation, things like that. And they end up being really, really cool events, really fulfilling. So to, get people out and know that there's all kinds of things happening at the library. It doesn't just have to be story time for kids, basically, although we do that too.
I think the hardest thing for musicians, like I started releasing albums way later in life, right? And it was because when I was a young musician, from 16 on, I had no idea about something like what you're doing. I had no resources and I had no idea how to record, no idea how to multi-instrument anything, mic anything. I mean, I had to do it by trial and error, which is what a lot of musicians. So you put out a lot of bad stuff, right? I won't say bad, but it's not like it's not great quality stuff, right? It's like a demo at best. So I love the fact that you're doing this, but we're kind of talking to the podcast culture is kind of a culture of a lot of young people too. So I
Right.
like to talk to the young musicians out there. And with you being on, this is great because I want you to tell them, as we do, that you have resources out there. You don't have to throw your hands up and just give up and go, oh, I'll never record anything or I'll never do anything great, because you can go connect with artists. You can have songwriting workshops and different things. You guys have all different resources, correct?
Absolutely. And, I think that's one of those things that even though, fundamentally the Polley Music Library is a collection of books and, sheet music books and things like that too. But there's a lot of power in that too. I think people kind of overlook it in the age of the internet, but like this collection, there's nothing like the Polley Music Library unless you go, all the way to the West Coast to like San Francisco or all the way to the East Coast to New York City. You're not going to find something like that in a public library anywhere else in the middle of the country anywhere at this point. There used to be, like 30 years ago, there were more things like this, but at this point we're the only game left in town. So I think people should check it out. And there's so much power to be had finding these books because they're, a lot of these things are written by experts in the field that have done this stuff for decades. They really know what's going on and they really want to share what they do. And there's so much you can learn just from those books. But then, again, with the programming as well, I think one of the most important things that a library in the modern age can do is be a place where people can come together. And I think that's a really important component of what we're doing now too. I kind of think the books are important, but in a way almost supplementary sometimes to the programming, where if we can get someone in and they're talking about something, a discussion will come up and I can say like, hey, we've got a book that kind of gets into this sort of thing. So after this discussion, let's go downstairs. I can hook you up with a few additional resources that you can dig into this further, that kind of thing. And I've gone through like so many of the books there. Like I think there's that old joke about librarians, like that they've read all the books or whatever, but I've actually read quite a few of the books in the music library at this point. So I have a pretty good sense of like what we have and what people can learn from it. So I think that's always a really important thing to do. And there's some cool things happening in Lincoln right now too that are not specifically related to the library, but are kind of part of that whole initiative for creating a downtown music district that are kind of connecting to the library. Like, have you guys heard about the new MBX or Music Box thing? There was kind of a grand opening for it back in April, but I think things officially will get rolling there more regularly around September. And the idea of that space, for those who haven't seen it yet, it's basically across the street from Bennett Martin. It's on the first floor of that Eagle parking garage, right along, I guess that's 14th Street there. Basically a new space that was built out. The city provided access to use the space in the parking garage, and then the Downtown Lincoln Association secured a bunch of grants to pay to kind of build it out. And the space is going to be devoted to like rehearsing, recording, all kinds of different musical training and educational mentorship type events on, all kinds of different musical topics, some philosophical things, learning songwriting and things like that. Others more technical, like learning how to do sound and lighting, because they've got some great equipment in there, recording tech, things like that. The recording gear in that place is stellar. I mean, it's nicer than what I have here. So it's pretty cool. You can learn more about it for anyone who wants to check it out. If you go to mbxlnk.com, they have a website that kind of has some general info about it. But starting in September, some of the events that I've been doing at the library, I'm going to try to do some things over there too, just because it is kind of a space dedicated to music, a little bit bigger than what I've been doing too. So I'm going to give that a try.
I was going to touch base with a little something you were talking about, because I was going to bring that up. And are we losing some funding to our Lincoln public libraries? Is that a true thing?
Not really. The political climate at the federal level right now is a little difficult, shall we say. Yeah, there have been some problems. What happens is we'll probably see differences in terms of things like library service that will differ from state to state. Nebraska is relatively lucky in that, at least so far, most of the funding for things like libraries, like in the case of Lincoln, most funding is coming from the municipal level at this point. So city taxes are taking care of most things related to the library. The second largest source will be like state funding. And so the state funding so far is doing well. Again, they're probably looking at having to do some budget cuts. So we'll find out maybe in a year that might not be the case. But for now, that's looking okay. The federal funding usually comes from what's called the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, or IMLS is the acronym for it. And IMLS did just get basically obliterated. So that is, definitely going to be problematic down the road. For Nebraska, basically IMLS money gets distributed to whatever the main state library agency is in each state. In the case of Nebraska, it's the Nebraska Library Commission. And it's a fairly small amount of money, so they dole that out mostly for, different programmatic type things, like people at different libraries around the state will apply for a grant to do some specific project, as opposed to it being like their operational budget, which is good in a case like this, because then we don't have like, that reliance on it for operationally speaking, but maybe they just won't do as many like fun things this coming year or cycle. Whereas if you're in different states, say like Mississippi comes to mind, Mississippi's using some of their IMLS funding for like operational budgets. States with pretty heavy rural populations and overall like lower educational levels, higher poverty, tend to be using that more for operations. And yeah, they're going to see some real trouble. Ditto for what we just saw for like the funding being cut for like public television and radio. There is some of that funding certainly that trickles down to the state, but like again, in Nebraska, we have, excuse me, in Nebraska, a lot of that funding tends to come from the state via UNL because that's kind of considered a project of UNL by extension. Whereas again, to use Mississippi, unfortunately, again, as a football, they're not doing so well on that front. They haven't organized that stuff. So there's going to be some problems that kind of differ from state to state. So it's kind of weird how federal funding doesn't necessarily always get used the same way. And so then it becomes kind of problematic as to how people will use it. It certainly is going to be problematic trying to figure out, where to scrounge up that extra little bit of money, because everyone's already kind of hurting. The economy is not doing that great. So every nonprofit and some of these smaller government agencies are all now going to be looking for these, little bits of money, which maybe are only, 15 or 20% of the money that they need to operate. But when they're all looking for it at the same time, that's going to be a little tricky. So
we are very fortunate here in Lincoln, of course, with, we have the Lead Center, we have the Johnny Carson Theater.
Yeah.
We have this Polley Music Library that is unique. And now we have this new project coming up across the street that's creating all this new kind of really buzz and really making us a cultural music center here in Nebraska. And of course, just want to see that keep going. And so I was just curious because I just recently heard some buzz that maybe we're running into some monetary pitfalls to that. And I figured maybe you had a little inside track to what was going on and just wanted to share that with our listeners.
Yeah. So far, so good. Down the road, a year from now, we'll have to probably reassess some of those things. Specific to the music library, I'll be totally okay unless like the library crumbles around me, basically. It's kind of an unusual circumstance. So the Polley Music Library was initially funded by a woman named Lillian Helms Polley. She was a professor and an opera singer. She taught at several different schools over time. She was at Wesleyan for a while. Most of her career, she was at UNL. And when she retired, she wanted to, actually the story goes, initially she wanted to start basically donating her collection to the UNL Music Library. And at the time, they didn't really have the space for it, so they declined. So she just walked up the street to Bennett Martin and said like, hey, how about we put something together? And they agreed. And so ultimately she created like a private trust. And that's kind of what continues to this day to fund basically the operations for Polley. And so it's kind of weird. I have kind of like two sets of bosses in a way. Like the way this trust works is I have to, all the things I do during the year, I have to have them approved by the library board and the library management. And then once they approve things, they get passed to the trustees of this private trust, which are basically all the directors of all the music schools in the state. So there's a lot of people that kind of can look at what I'm doing and be like, I don't like that. But so far, they've all been very, very kind and supportive. I haven't run into any issues with that. But there's a lot of people certainly that kind of look at what we do. And the funding on that, again, so far, my funding is basically just like kind of the average of the interest over the previous 3 years for what I'll do in the successive year. So,
well, I know that you're kind of affiliated with KZUM as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they always have once a year, whatever they, call in and give to them. And it takes the community to kind of keep that running. And I know that what you have going on with the library, I used to take my kids there all the time. We would go get movies and books and the music especially, and we'd go rent them all. And, sometimes they got back to the library, sometimes they didn't.
Totally.
But is that something though, like KZUM, where you can have just the community come together and give? Because it sounds like a great opportunity for so many people.
You mean as far as like
and just
giving
maybe
more for
not
the library or for?
Yeah, just maybe not rely so much on the government and everybody and rely on the community and having things together so we can get together and give money to this program. Because I know I was just talking to a friend of mine about like children and wanting to get into music, and they don't have the funds, the money to do it, but have a place for it. And then sometimes we can't really rely so much on, you know, government things or the actual, you know, things that may go away, but having the community come together and doing something like that, is you see that in the future, maybe is something like that?
Yeah, it's a possibility. No, I'll say this. This is just my own opinion, not speaking for the library at all. But like I think in general, I tend to prefer when governments can sort of operate these kinds of things, just in the sense that at least when things are going normally, governments tend to be better stewards of money because they make decisions very slowly compared to, say, like corporations who, if it's profit focused, they're going to make decisions strictly based on profit and not really worry about consequences that may be impacted by those kinds of short-term decisions. Whereas the government, you know, there's people can complain that the government moves slowly, but I think that's actually, it tends to be an advantage of it, because being slow means that you're having to be a more discerning steward of money, and, you know, therefore hopefully decisions are made that are, you know, thinking things through really carefully, knowing that you're spending other people's, you know, hard-earned money essentially that's been pulled together. Usually that ends up being a good thing. Now we're kind of seeing obviously some strange times that we're in, where things are actually moving kind of quickly at the federal level, and also kind of in an unprecedented way. And not to get too political on the show, I guess, but yeah, I'm not sure I don't feel good about it. What's happening right now. It's very strange. I've actually started working on, I wasn't going to mention this on the show, but I'm always kind of working on some goofy solo projects. And one of them I'm working on right now is, I think I'm going to call it Feudalisms. And it's kind of going to be like some sort of satirical songs talking about how a lot of the things that we're seeing right now happening just in really the last few months seem to be reminding me of like living in the Middle Ages. So the lyrics are going to be kind of things about that, you know, like plagues returning, people starving, services collapsing, you know, all those sorts of things, all, you know, for the sake of wealthy people, you know, making a slightly larger profit that they probably won't even notice because it'll look like a rounding error to them. So those sorts of things are, again, not things I would really talk about at work per se, but yeah, I mean, I do think about them, and I am kind of worried about where those things are going. You know, historically, we find that there are times like this where people then start saying, well, you know, churches often come to mind, where people will say, like, well, the churches can take care of these things or help starving people, let's say. But then you're putting the onus on people to, you know, it's a lot of pressure to put on an organization that really isn't created purposely for that. You know, maybe they want to help, but then you're saying, like, take on this structural problem and deal with it long term, which is fine in a way. But on the other hand, like, if we all have to continue to gather together to pool our resources directly, like, that's what we were supposed to have the government for in the first place. You know, like they're supposed to be doing it, and they're just kind of like, it seems to me like they're kind of wanting to shirk some of the responsibilities that are the reasons that people come together and want to form governments in the first place, in my personal opinion anyway. But yeah, to your point, I think in the short term, yeah, I think we're totally going to see things like that, because there's really no viable alternative right now. So,
well, and sometimes we just got to live for today and not
totally, you're
so
right.
much and about the future, because you never know what's going to happen. And this kind of is related to being in the moment. So I was am a massage therapist, was for my own practice for a long time. And I know that you have some other music out that is kind of a different approach to the meditation music. And I was always in the moment and listening to that. So I listened to some of yours, and I would definitely buy all of it, everything. It'd be cooler if you were like in the room with me playing that music while I did a massage. It'd feel so much more entertaining.
I would like to do some of that, actually. Maybe playing some of it live even.
It would be amazing. And have, you know, the yoga in the park, you know, have like a nice little massage thing and have your guys' band. Is that something that the meditation music, how did you even get that started? Like, I'm so intrigued by this.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is kind of weird. Like, to go back to the beginning is this funny story that has to do with my wife's relatives. Like, they seem to end up giving me weird instruments every once in a while. And so her aunt and uncle, this is maybe like almost 10 years ago now. They owned some of those storage unit things that people can rent, and they were clearing one out that hadn't been paid for like 15 years or something. And there had been like water intrusion and stuff, and so a lot of the stuff in it was damaged. But among those things was like an old lap steel. They're kind of hard to date because they don't have serial numbers, but roughly probably in the 1950s. This thing was in pretty rough shape, and it smelled all moldy and gross, and it was all rusted, and the electronics didn't work. But I was kind of intrigued by it, and they were just going to toss it basically. So I took it apart and cleaned it and got everything working again. It just sounds so cool. I mean, it's just like such a neat sound, and playing with like a slide and stuff, of course. So I started kind of messing around with that like almost like a decade ago. And in doing so, I started initially just doing sort of silly things with it. And then as I started being a little bit more serious about it, because I'm mostly a guitar player, I started thinking about like Hindustani music, how you get a lot of those sorts of those kinds of ornaments require either a slide, or like if you're playing sitar, there's like a huge space where you kind of press the strings down and bend like into the neck and stuff to get similar kinds of sounds. So I kind of started, I got a few books on Hindustani music, which the library unfortunately didn't have, and ordered some of those in and started learning a little bit just for fun. And then last November, I guess, or last September, I actually played one of those yoga in the park things on lap steel, doing some of that music. And then it was like last November, I think I played a gig with this bass player, Eric Aspengren, who is fantastic and very sensitive to doing this kind of thing as well. Because we're both really interested in meditation as well. And I am kind of definitely thinking of this very consciously as like a meditation related type of project too. I ended up tracking down this instrument. I think this is unplugged enough. I can drag it over here if you guys want to see this. It's actually kind of an unusual instrument here. I'll be right back.
Yeah, so he's going right now for the listener. He's he's going to retrieve this instrument. I can't wait to see it. He's got some pretty cool stuff behind him. We'll have some clips out there, everybody. But
I've seen it.
Yeah.
He's got a couple video clips on it. Yeah, hopefully maybe we get a good video clip of this. This is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. I was at a music shop, and I don't even know if it's still around, but I got to play one of those. And they said, you can borrow it. You can rent it if you want. And I said, I am not taking that home. I would definitely not, probably return it like our books at the library.
It's kind of like Spock on Star Trek. That's what we're looking at right now.
Yes, that's awesome.
So this thing is generally speaking, this is an instrument that is used in Hindustani music as kind of an accompaniment instrument for singers. And so it combines two traditional Hindustani instruments in one. First, you have what's called a tempura, which is the four strings over here. So you just kind of they just generally strum them. And then up at the top here, all these extra strings are a form of a harp that they call a swarmandal. But what I realized, I don't know if I can hold this up close enough that you guys can see, when this thing arrived, I was just going to continue playing the lap steel and use this as like an additional kind of accompaniment thing. But then it got here, and as I looked at it, I was like, I wonder what the scale length of this thing is, like the length of the strings on this tempura section. And so I measured it, and it's exactly the same length as a Fender Strat. And so that made me think, I could play slide on this thing directly. So I don't know if you can see the fretboard drawn on there, but I realized I could just like print out a template for a Fender Strat neck and then just draw the fret markers on here. And then I can actually play this thing just like it's a Strat, basically. So you can kind of get like this sort of thing. Like,
well, you got Cain really excited right there. I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I think Zoom kind of screws us on the sounds that he's playing. But I can describe to you guys that it sounds very cool. It's just not picking up in the audio.
Oh, right on. But yeah, it's a pretty weird, because it kind of sounds like a sitar, basically. So it's a way to play sitar without, I think that would be a pretty difficult instrument for me to learn at this stage, but this thing I can actually play fairly well. So, so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. This has been kind of my new thing to kind of experiment with for the last 8 months or so, I guess. So
I absolutely
so that's
love
kind of
that
the main instrument that I'm using.
That's a beautiful instrument. I think I was at Palmer's Music. I don't know if you guys have been there, but they had one of those.
Yeah.
It was huge though, and
oh, nice.
I got to play it, and I just love the sound of it, and I use it a lot in my massage, and it's a
awesome,
very beautiful instrument. I wish I could hear you play it. Damn it, Zoom.
Oh yeah. Well, it's the thing on that. If you go to that link, there's just the one recording that we've done so far, which was actually like it was kind of a live benefit thing. There was a benefit for, I live in the Woods Park neighborhood, and back in, I think it was in February, we had those really intense snowstorms. and there was a fire that took out like 3 houses a couple blocks from me. And so there was a benefit at Pepe's where people came and all the food for that day, all that money was donated to the families that had their houses damaged or destroyed. And then a few of us played music outside. And so I set up I put the music that we played basically on Bandcamp so people can donate. Like if they buy the music on there, then I'll pass that money through to them as well too. So, or you can just listen for free too. So that's fine. But yeah, that's been kind of a fun new project that's been kind of brewing for a while, but it's just finally starting to kind of come into focus, I guess you could say.
All right, party people, throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care. We have the local roundup happening. We have the Elegant Sasquatch ad coming up. We're going to talk about the sponsors, the great people, places and things that keep things going for the show and continue to support us and support you in local music. And then we're just going to keep rolling on. And so everybody stick around. And then when we get back after the local roundup, we'll be back with our guest, Scott Scholz.
Dude, last night was a rager. I literally don't remember anything. What happened and why do our beards smell so bad?
It all started when a Sasquatch came out of the woods. He was doing keg stands. He DJ'd the party for a while. He even brought a live skunk to hang out. It was epic. It was getting late when Sasquatch's skunk friend decided to spray his pungent odor everywhere. Now our beards smell like rotten eggs and trash.
Don't worry, friend.
Is that you, Sasquatch?
It's me, your boy Squatch. Have no fear, my nose-melting follicle friends. I have just what you're looking for to get the skunk stench out of those skunkified beards. The Elegant Sasquatch Beard Company has all sorts of balms, butters, oils, and washes to turn you from skunk to hunk in no time.
Oh, bro, this is a trip. I feel like I'm dreaming, man. I'm going to go back to bed.
Well, pinch yourself now because you're not dreaming, my friend. I'm here to tell you about all the great things going on at the Elegant Sasquatch Beard Company.
Oh, tell me you have something to help us with these smelly beards.
Not only do I have something for that, but I have so much more. Head on over to elegantsasquatchco.etsy.com to check out the shop and look at all the different beard balms, butters, oils, face washes, and bundles that we have to offer. In addition to all of our great prices, if you mention the Scratch the Vinyl podcast with Scratch30 at checkout, you'll get an additional 30% off of your order.
Oh, man, this beard wash is amazing, and these oils smell so good I could drink it.
Oh, you foolish little human. That's not what they're talking about with hair of the dog.
But seriously, Squatch, these scents are amazing. I already smell better.
Well, on that note, it's time to grab another beer and, oh, it looks like our friend the skunk just arrived. It's time to party. I call dibs on the first game of beer pong.
All right, party people. Once again, we are back at it with the local roundup. So we have a ton going on, so let's not waste the sauce. Let's get started here. So first off, I don't see anything at Gray's Keg. I looked all over the place, so you might want to check the bar or check their website or their Facebook page and see what they have, but I don't see anything posted. Let's move on over to the Zoo Bar. The Zoo Bar, Friday night at 9 p.m., they have John Voyage. And then Saturday, they have the Roe Hempel Band. Over at 1867, they've got a lot going on. It looks like Saturday night, they've got a benefit. It looks like the Radiation 2025 Drone Noise Exhibition, which is the benefit for the Everett Free Grocery Program, which I can't think of a better thing to help out with than helping people with groceries. And they've got a ton. So it looks like... doors open at 6, probably show at 7. They've got COTE, Cody, Cade, I don't know what it is, but they're playing Grab Ass, Gut Eater, Despair, Decay, Spare Parts, Danimal Noise, Sheep Girl X _X69, Ionic Bond, and Weaving Shadows. So there's an action-packed lineup over there. Go over there and support that great cause. What else do we have going on? We have a ton. Duffy's on Saturday night. They have the big parking lot party with Joy Rager. The 7 p.m. doors, 8 p.m. show. Sunday, they have Grave Next Door, Hollow Citizens, and Phantom Crypt. I believe that's also at 7 p.m. doors and 8 p.m. show. So check out all their pages to get the information on that. Madson's, let's roll on over to there. Madson's Bowling and Billiards. They're Rock and Bowl. They have our friends who were just on the show not too long ago, Pop Shove It. So go show them some love, everybody. That show is at 8 p.m. I know there's a lot more going on out there, but that is what I got for this week. So check out all of the entertainment and go everywhere. Don't just go to one place. Who cares about those minuscule little covers? Make your way to all the places if you can and represent Scratch the Vinyl. Now let's talk about our sponsors. We have Roots Music Shop, of course. Everything is cooler with an instrument. Your cool factor can instantly go up if you have a guitar hanging in your living room, and if you play it, you're definitely going to get dudes, chicks, whatever, animals, whatever you're into. Also, we have Backtrack Records. I'm still challenging everybody to the I will buy all the records eventually, but I hope that you buy them also. So go to Backtrack Records. Lil Bill's Barbecue. I've been drinking this stuff like a superhero, like a boss. I've been the envy of the town when it comes to cookouts. I've been drinking it and shoving it up my nose, and it's made me like some sort of mutant creature, but it's also made me like a superhero. So get that Lil Bill's Barbecue sauce. American Senior Benefits. Don't forget to ask for the man himself, the man with the plan, Jason. Oh my gosh, to gosh. Ask for him and he will have a plan for you. We have Gray's, obviously. And then, of course, the TAM. If you're hungry, go back and forth. Drink, eat, whatever you do, go there. Sly Ink Tattoo. I know you guys are still holding on to a stockpile of money, but it's starting to run out. So use the last of your money that you got. And just don't like starve the kids or anything, but go and get yourself a tattoo from Sly Ink Tattoo. Tell Bryce, Cain, and Scratch the Vinyl sent you. And now let's get back to it with our guest from the Polley Music Library and so much more, Scott Scholz. Man, I got to get together with you sometime, Scott, and just hang out with you, kind of soak in all the, I mean, you have all these cool instruments, just watch you play them. I definitely want to do that at some point. It's fascinating. I see that
Totally.
You have a lap steel behind you, correct?
I do, yes. Yeah, there's a lap steel there. Over this way, there's a, see if I steer this over, there's a hammered dulcimer back there.
Oh, yeah. Man.
What else is in here? Yeah, more lap steel. Most of the instruments are kind of back the other way in here, and then like records and stuff like that are over there. But yeah, it's a pretty, mostly I play guitar, but I've been like, in the last few years, I've been mostly learning kind of Middle Eastern instruments. This Hindustani thing is kind of a newer sort of thing, but I've spent like the last, since about mid 2020, I guess, kind of learning some Hindustani, some Turkish instruments like the saz, balama.
So then what got you into all of this and what got you into music?
Lifelong Nebraskan, other than I went to music school in Denver, and I lived in Indiana for a couple of years where I ran the sheet music department of a music store there. What got me into music? I guess when I was a little kid, I was just always super interested in music and like humming, and like I would like sing myself to sleep most nights and stuff. But I wasn't really like doing much directly with music until like, I played like trombone in elementary school and stuff like that, but I wasn't thinking of that as like, I didn't have like a deep connection to the trombone or anything like that. I got a guitar at 13 and immediately was like super, super into that and practiced like constantly. And that was kind of that would have been like in the early 90s, kind of just the very tail end of like kind of the hair metal shred guitar people, just as it transitioned into grunge basically. So I kind of just grabbed onto the last vestiges of like the shred guitar people and was like kind of into that sort of thing. Yeah, I kind of focused on that. Like my early influences were shred guitar people. And then like, I got really into like Frank Zappa, and then John Zorn, who's like a composer and saxophone player from New York. I was super, super into his music. I got so into Zorn, in fact, that at some point, I guess I decided that I wanted to kind of pursue music and decided to go to music school rather than, I think I was looking at like chemical engineering or something at the time as like the other thing to do, which in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't do because that sounds super boring at this point. So kind of things from there, just, I did the music school thing. I went in as like a commercial composition major. Once I was there, it was like within the first week. This sounds so nerdy to say, I guess, in retrospect, but I was like, I was in a car with another music student. At the time, there was like a weird movement in like the mid 90s of like shred guitar players studying classical music. I don't know why. Now, in retrospect, I kind of feel like metal is like the new classical music or something. It has that same level of like complexity and nuance and weird things happening. But he was just like, he was going to go drive around town and show me stuff because he'd been there for a year already. So I was like, cool. So I jumped in the car and he was cranking Henryk Goretzky's Second String Quartet. So we're driving around Denver cranking this string quartet, which sounds super nerdy, but it's actually a pretty brutal sounding string quartet. It's sort of this like bitonal thing. So it sounds really, there's like all these super sharp, like quarter notes just dragging on them over and over and stuff. So it's kind of metal-y sounding in a weird way. And yeah, so here we are just driving around. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I want to study classical music. so I switched to that. Yeah, I did the classical music thing. And then, yeah, I was in Indiana. And I've been in Lincoln since about 2001. And I worked at the Library Commission for a long time running the Talking Book and Braille service. And while I was there, I was kind of just doing music as my, it was still my passion. So I was doing that pretty much all night, every night. I played in some bands that gigged, one that did a little bit of touring. Gosh, what else? Then I hosted like some house shows. I had like a little record label that did like cassette label basically that's kind of almost dead, but it's never quite dead. I guess those things are hard to put down. So I'm doing a little bit of that still, but started doing some music journalism stuff, writing a lot of record reviews, and kind of just learning, I guess my relationship with music has been pretty open-ended, where I feel like anything that comes up that sounds interesting, I just kind of try to pursue it. So even though guitar is kind of I guess I would call it my central instrument, or the way that I kind of think about music kind of through the guitar, anything else that comes up or different styles of music, I'm pretty open just to like basically trying different things and learning about them, learning about other music around the world and how other cultures have expressed themselves. Yeah, I feel like you come away from those kinds of experiences like just kind of knowing a little bit more about what it's like to be a human being, like the human experience in general, and how things are a little bit different in different times and different places, but how they're all really kind of the same too. And we can find those cool links between time and place that way. So
actually, I was just going to say that. Like, first, that's a great story, and ultimately, you're correct. It doesn't matter. All kind of music kind of connects some way or another, and a lot of times it just takes us experiencing something new to find it. And our listeners can't see this, but behind you have like this massive cassette collection I see, and we talk about this. We talk about that a lot, of course, with vinyl. And do you have a massive library? Like, do you mass a lot of music yourself?
I do. What ended up happening, the cassettes, I mean, I still buy some cassettes. I have like, here I've got, I guess these are 3 from this week, I guess, that have shown up. But usually these days I'm still buying mostly like vinyl and CDs and some tapes, not as much for tape. But when I started doing record reviews, a lot of people, this would have been like, oh gosh, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. A lot of places weren't interested in reviewing cassette-based material. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I've got a tape deck. I'll listen to it. And so they would start sending me tapes. And once it became known that I was kind of like cassette friendly or whatever, all the underground cassette people started sending stuff. And yeah, there's this room, I guess you can't see the rest of it, but yeah, there's a ton of vinyl on the back wall and a little bit over here, way more cassettes over here. It's just like, there's more cassettes upstairs and more vinyl upstairs. It's it starts to get kind of crazy. There was a period there, like in the early teens, like I must have gotten at least like 10 to 15 records and tapes and stuff in the mail like every day, just like unsolicited review things. And you can't even keep up, I mean, like if you're lucky, you can write like maybe 3 or 4 reviews a week if you're like really on top of your game, where you like actually, listen carefully. And because I didn't want to just like knock out stuff like repeating what the one sheet says or whatever. Like I listened a ton, and if I liked it, I like would go back and find that artist's previous stuff if I hadn't heard it before and kind of try to put it in context. And oh my God, it just was a lot of work. So yeah, I tried to keep up with all that stuff. And yeah, the cassettes, as I got more into cassette stuff, because I never really didn't listen to some music on cassette, once you're in that world and hearing from all those people and they kind of become your friends and you're corresponding with them, then you kind of have to start a cassette label on your own, right? So then I started this thing called Timble Tapes, and I put out, I guess altogether I've put out 31 tapes. This started back in like 2015. The last time I put out a batch of tapes was like 2 years ago. So it's kind of sitting dormant at this point. But I'll probably end up doing a few more because it's just how these things go. But yeah, you try to keep up with it as much as you can. I have listened to all those tapes back there. That's like a lot of time. I've definitely spent a lot of time listening to that stuff. Yeah, it's pretty intense. But yeah, I love hearing what other people are doing. Like that scene, for example, like kind of the underground cassette world of like the late aughts and early teens. You'll find a lot of people who were, it kind of reminds me of like the cassette culture scene of the 80s, actually. You find a lot of people that were coming out of it, had like no musical background at all. They're just kind of like messing around with things and trying new sounds that have like this totally unschooled perspective that can be really intriguing. And then also you had a scene where a lot of people that were interested in like visual art or graphic design get really into it. And they're good too. It's interesting. They come to it with kind of, they're still not what I would call trained musicians, but they have like this sense of training of like the kinds of considerations you would have for doing visual art. And they take that into sound. And you get results that I wouldn't personally have thought of that can be really cool, really interesting things. So, a lot of those kinds of influences, I think it's great, again, just to find that even like different cultures and different eras, like even just different disciplines of art can bring really cool things to the table. Like you can be like thinking about music visually and come up with these super cool ideas that somebody like me that's sort of stuck in like, music theory backgrounds or scales or whatever, like I wouldn't come up with that stuff. I would just be like, blows my mind, it's really cool. So yeah, it's great. The more listening a person can do, I think the better a musician they'll end up being ultimately.
Well, it's interesting. I see all those tapes, and one, I'm super jealous. Like I wish that my back wall, trust me, I have a lot of cool things, but I wish my back wall was your backdrop also. Like I wish I could mix it together. It looks great. But the media of cassette is so not only nostalgic, but it just feels so good to me because like when I was first listening to music, it was all cassettes. And, like we would listen to some vinyl that our parents had, but then like I'd have girlfriends give me CDs and I would literally just pitch them, like, what's this? I don't even know what to do with this thing. Like I can remember getting a Bangles one from a girlfriend. And it's not that I hated the Bengals. I mean, they have their, certain place in everybody's heart, but I threw it away instantly. I was like, I don't even have a CD player. Don't care. So I'm definitely interested in that. But what's interesting is what you were talking about was like the art and everything. Like that's what we love about vinyl and how it used to be. You'd go to the store, you'd see a tape or you'd see vinyl, and you would make a decision solely off of sometimes the artwork. But now in today's age, I got to ask you, it's really hard because AI is out there and it's a conversation now. And artists are being put to the back burner because a lot of us can't afford to go to the artist. And so we're asking AI to come up with some pretty cool stuff. So what say you on the AI world and what it's doing to art right now?
Oh boy. I do have really strong feelings about it. And I tend to be very negative about it. But that said, well, let me put it this way. When I'm at work, I, again, don't really express my opinions super strongly about this. And the reason for that, in large part, is that I'm pretty privileged. I mean, I have a great job. I have all this stuff in here. Like, I don't really have a lot to worry about. Like, if I need to have art done, I don't really have a ton of discretionary income to pay artists and stuff. What I've often done, like with Timble Tapes, for example, I was doing like trades. So there's this fellow, if you go to this website, tinylittle.hammers.com, it's this incredible artist, Dylan McConnell, lives in Canada now. And he had a tape label going at the time and needed mastering. And I happened to do some mastering as a side gig. So I would trade him and I would master stuff for his label and he would do art for mine. So, I was doing things like that. But, coming up with those relationships, again, I'm kind of coming from an already sort of privileged position. And, there are folks who, like down at Ben and Martin, we get a lot of folks who come in who are homeless or nearly so, and really don't have, they don't have relationships like that. They don't have the opportunities to do anything else. So yeah, they're totally going to be using AI whenever possible to fill gaps that they're not able to cover economically or with things that they can do themselves. And, I can't fault them for that really. From a bigger picture perspective, I do worry that I don't think this stuff is taking us in a very good direction in terms of the, human expression, to the extent that art is supposed to be about us, it's a form of communication and a form of expression between people. I don't really care about the forms of expression that are between computerized approximations of humans. I don't really, that seems kind of creepy and gross, and I'm not into it. But again, with some exceptions for people that are just trying to get their things done. I just really, I don't feel good about it. I don't feel like it. I would rather see personally somebody do like kind of a half-assed job on their own art and then have great music than like trying to do something that looks slick just to have it look slick,
What are you going to do in a live show? Like with the live show, you can have a hologram, you're going to create all this music and have all this stuff. I mean, yeah, they have instruments for all of that, but I get really scared about the actual person, the live music, the one that wrote the song that from their heart, like you were saying. And I mean, are you kind of afraid of that a little bit with the, live going to kind of go to crap?
Well, that, and just the fact that, we're seeing like, I don't want to sound like a fuddy-duddy yelling at kids to like get off my lawn or whatever, but at the same time, like we're definitely seeing like, I mean, I could see 10 years from now, kids maybe not even wanting to go see shows. Like they'll send their AI agent to go see a show and tell them how it was. That's creepy, but I could see, that sort of thing happening. Or, just the whole notion of, well, if we go back to like, let's say when the internet first became like a bigger thing, then it was just essentially like a message board other than like military industrial complex stuff. At that point, it was just kind of this cool, unique new thing. But then the first generation that was raised entirely within the internet, I think it developed like a totally different way of learning about art and music. Like their sense of it, when I think, say compared to books in the music library, those books will give you like a context, a timeline, sort of put you in a place where you can kind of understand what you're doing, how that connects to everything else around you. And if you're coming from the generation that was just picking everything up strictly from the internet, you don't have that. It's sort of an ahistorical way of learning. Like you don't necessarily have a context for what you're doing. You move fluidly between different genres and things like that. And sometimes those things are great. I mean, I think that can be really good for art. On the other hand, I don't know if it's good for a person, for your connection to humanity. I think that might actually be sort of compromised, because then you sort of feel like you're just floating around in space and that people haven't done anything that makes any logical sense or has a progression to it, because it does. I mean, there is a progression to it. And I think sometimes knowing what that is, even if you choose to ignore it in your art, I think you should choose to ignore it because you know what you're ignoring, instead of just like having no clue what's going on. So yeah, I worry about that, because I just don't think we're heading in a good direction if we forego, having all those sorts of skills. Or like, for example, something that's sort of like not even quite full on AI stuff yet, but like in the last few years, I've seen different companies for software packages that I use for recording, like Reason and Ableton, selling these chord packs. So like if you're writing a song, you don't even need to write out like a chord progression for it. You just like open up your chord pack software and let it pop in a chord progression, and now you kind of write to that. Like, so what are you doing? Like, what's your song? At some point you start to lose control over like what is it that you're doing versus that you're sort of advocating to and some form of automation, I guess. And like, I feel like part of the fun of doing all this stuff, or part of the joy, part of the stuff that it brings out of your soul, is that you wrestle through all those things. And again, even if you do them badly, like, God, I mean, in my life, I've probably written 3,000 or 4,000 songs, and maybe 40 of them are good, honestly, and that's totally cool. I mean, that's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to like fuck up and learn, like over and over and over, and you get better and better and better. And most of it should be pretty awful. And then the beautiful things kind of start to come out of that. And then you latch onto those and find yourself, and other people recognize that and hear that. And I think there's a certain kind of integrity that I think you can just hear in the music of people that have kind of gone through that process, that you can tell, like when you're listening to something, like that person bought a chord pack, didn't they? I mean, you can just kind of hear it. It's like, they didn't come up with that. Like, and then AI, you can phone the whole thing in now. So I just worry about that, where people are getting to the point where you could even just plug in a couple lyrics and say, kick me out a country tune mid-tempo that hits the chorus before 30 seconds, because that's what you need to be on the radio, and you're good to go. I mean, maybe that's a good way to make money, but it's not a good way to make art, I think. So that's kind of tricky.
That kind of brings me to a story that me and Cain just went through not that long ago. Cain had been working on this song for like 15 years.
Oh, man.
Isn't that true, Cain? 15?
Yeah, I mean, I was hung up on this song. I knew I had good, really good lyrics to something in my head. Like you said, you write a bunch and some of it's not all great. But anyways, I could never finish this one. And yeah, that's basically
Yeah, he sent it over to me, and we kind of went back and forth on a couple things. I don't know, for maybe a day or two, right? And it kind of clicked, and he sent it back to me, and I listened. I go, dude, that's like one of your best. I think that's one of the best lyrical songs you've ever written. And he always kind of knew where he wanted to go with it, but he kind of struggled for that long time, like 15 years. But when he finally got there, I mean, that's just rewarding. I mean, I think that's kind of your point, is that there has to be something to the passion of what you're doing. And we've all dabbled in writing, and that's, I feel like after this conversation, I feel like our job just got 1,000 times harder, that we have to remind people to take their kids to a live show. Please, please take them to the library and experience some different music. Please go to the theater. There is, life is about experiences. And I've always felt it's just more rewarding when we actually get to see this live and in action. And I think that's why that's why we do this show, is that we have this love for music in a sense, and it all does mean something different to us. And it's awesome when you see that creativity come out of someone. Like I was blown away. Like when Cain sent me that last copy of that song, I immediately called him up and I said, dude, that was it. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, dude, I'm for sure.
Can you agree, though, that like computers and AI and all that, it's kind of an evolution of music, though? If we see this as an instrument rather than something just to do it for us, it's kind of like, grandma, she didn't just wake up one day and there's a car. She used to ride or have a horse that went to school. It's an evolution of it. But if we use it correctly and not in a form of overtaking our creativity, but using it like Cain said, like, hey, I was stuck here. Let's see what we can do. I think there's good points to it, but I think we have to be really careful about how we're using it. If it's taking away from us, it's more, just something that we can have to amplify what we are doing and making it maybe easier. Like we interviewed someone that they were so happy to be in an actual recording studio because they have all of these things that they can fix. And, it doesn't mean that that's not who they are. It's just helping us to create what we see in our head or what we feel in our, like I could bring lyrics up, but I can't sing very well. I find a singer and then we find some, but we have this technology, just like now with this podcast, if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be here. So I'd really, I think it's going to be in the hands of like who is doing it. And I think that there's good and bad, but it's just like anything else. So you can give somebody something that is supposed to be wonderful and it can turn awful. But I think music is a universal language. I don't think we're ever really going to lose it as far as all to AI and, just computers. And I think that we are having a shift as far as our children, because you were right. There was that point when everybody was all about the internet and they were, the computers, everything's coming out. And it was kind of like this new thing to figure out how to work it. I don't think that the live music and all that will go away. If it does go away, it's probably not going to be because, we're decided not to do it. It's going to be some other kind of mass global thing or something happening. But I hope that my children and their children get to see live music all the time and we use it in the right way. And I think people like you, Scott, that teach people. I mean, you wear so many hats and you're just so intelligent, and people like you and you just teaching other people and it keeps going. I really commend you for what you do. And you're so intelligent and so knowledgeable about everything. And we are grateful to have you on here, and you have so much great insight on everything. And I really want to just come see you play sometime, or see you perform or talk or, and I'd love to know next time that we can get a hold of you or go find you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a couple of shows coming up. Yeah, as far as like just general stuff, let me see if I can track these dates down here. The main thing that I worry about with technology in general, like each new iteration of technology has made things easier and easier and slicker, and we're losing that need to fail, frankly, sometimes. And I think one of the most important things that happens in learning experiences is just screwing things up, basically. I mean, it sounds silly to say in a way, but it's true. Like, failure is like our best teacher a lot of the time, like, because you learn something directly. Like, you can go through and have someone tell you how something is supposed to go, but you learn so much more just doing it yourself and like hitting a brick wall and knowing how you hit it and how you could avoid it next time. And those kinds of things I think are so important. And so that's always what I worry about, I guess, is that people will get so excited about never having to fail, basically. Because, you know, it's like the way people's lives look on social media, right? Like, nobody posts like when they, and myself included, you know, I never make a post like, hey, today I tried to learn a song and I'm terrible at playing it. I can't possibly do it. You know, like, nobody ever does that. But if they did, I mean, maybe that would be interesting. But yeah, we always hear about, you know, the cool, great thing that happened that day, the awesome food they ate, the great show they saw. But yeah, sometimes it's the inner lives that we lead that we don't tell each other about all the things that we're vulnerable about, or that we aren't very good at yet, but that we're getting better at. We're not quite ready to show them to the world yet, but those are the things that make us who we are. I think those are the things that harden us up and make us into the people that we are. And I just hope the tech lets us keep failing occasionally so we can get stronger somehow. But yeah, gigs. Let's see, on August 8th, I'm playing a house show. I'll be opening for this incredible guitarist, Joseph Allred. I don't know if you guys have heard him, but he's just incredible. He's done one tour and come through here before, I think about a year ago. And I'm going to basically do kind of a weird opening set. I'm always kind of kicking around some weird ideas for solo projects and stuff. And so for some reason, I got obsessed with this idea. There was the first thing called the guitar, which we now call the Renaissance guitar, was like it was an 8-string instrument, but in 4 courses, so like 4 pairs. And it was tuned just like a ukulele. And so there's this little body of music, about 900-ish pieces that had been written for that, roughly from like 1510 to about 1640. And then other instruments, particularly the lute at that time, were much more popular, and then it just kind of disappeared. And so at that point, I just stumbled across, I think somebody asked a question at the library, and I was like, oh, I want to learn how to do this. So I printed out a bunch of that music, and I learned a bunch of it over the last month. And so I think I'm going to do a gig playing ukulele opening for Joseph Allred, which is kind of crazy because I don't really like the ukulele or like Renaissance stuff. So, but it's kind of fun. I don't know. It'll be, again, it's one of those weird things where I'm also terrible at finger picking. I'm mostly a pick player. So I'm probably not going to play super well, but it'll be fun. So that's kind of a great example of failure right there. Like, I will probably not put on the best show of my life on August 8th, but come check it out anyway. And it'll be cool.
Where's it at? Where at?
So it's at a house show. If anybody wants to like contact me or whatever on social media, I can tell you what it's at. The place is called Bitch Wizard. It's a lady's basement. That she does shows occasionally. The next 2 shows I have coming up, other than that, are both shows with my new band Whip Sigils, which plays like, it's hard to explain this stuff. Let's just call it microtonal medieval jazz metal stuff or something. It sounds much cooler than that description sounded, I think. Hopefully. We're playing August 23rd. We'll be at Duffy's doing an album release show for Dirty Talker, one of my favorite bands in town. I think Vera Devora is also playing on that show. And then September 5th, we'll be at the Keg with Within Wilds, another one of my favorite local bands. So that should be really fun. Yeah, that band, we are like on fire right now. I think that's the best band I've ever played in, honestly. We're really fun to watch too. Some kind of unusual instruments, but it's a good time. So
What's the name of the band again? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, it's called Whip, WHIP, Sigils, SIGILS. That's a whole story unto itself, I guess. It's it was another library thing. I was sitting in the library in like April of 2020 when everything was closed. I was the only person on the second floor for like 3 weeks or something, and trying to figure out things to like post on social media to talk with people and be like, hey, I wonder what how other cultures had dealt with pandemics musically. And so I ended up kind of looking back at the plague, and we do have evidence from like roughly the mid 1200s and then again in the mid 1300s, 2 rounds of the plague that went around, that people did write some music associated with them. So I hunted down these little fragments of music that we had left and started kind of working with them and kind of making arrangements out of them, because at the time they were just like chant, vocal kind of stuff. You know those scenes in like Monty Python where the monks are walking around hitting themselves in the head? It's basically that kind of music that it started with. These were the real people doing that. Actually, they were like self-flagellating, like hitting themselves with whips and stuff, which is funny too. Like these were people going from town to town trying to stop the plague, right? They were like oh, we hope the plague doesn't keep going everywhere. But they were like a plague vector themselves, right? Because they're going from town to town, whipping themselves, spreading the plague. So oopsie daisy, that didn't work out so well. Yeah. So anyway, I found some of their music, and I was kind of manipulating that. And in studying that, I started thinking about the Occitania area of Europe at that, kind of in that general era, like 1200s, 1300s, and like the Albigensian Crusade around that time, and how it got rid of like the Cathars and this sort of permissive culture where there was some Islamic influence on early secular songwriting happening there. It kind of got pushed out. So I started thinking about these Turkish instruments, and that's how I ended up like learning how to play like the saz and the oud and stuff in the last few years. And so some of that stuff comes up in this band, but it also kind of sounds like there's sort of like surf rock elements and punk elements and stuff like that too. So it's not like a stodgy thing to watch. So it's pretty sweet in my opinion. Watching this band, it's pretty cool.
Well, that's amazing. Got a lot going on, and Scott, just so you know, we're more than happy to post all this stuff on our social page stuff on Scratch the Vinyl, just to get the word out so people can come and check this kind of stuff out. I mean, this is unique. I mean, this is I think this is, if anybody ever wanted to go see a medieval sound. No, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, we touch on every genre of music, and I think, and we're more than happy to post that out for you.
Awesome.
And unfortunately, as it always goes, we get to talking, and time flies, and we can't thank you enough for coming and sharing, your insights today, and just what you're doing in music and supporting the Lincoln scene. We appreciate you so much for coming on today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm just glad to be able to come on, and I've been listening to you, catching up on you guys' shows and stuff too, and you guys are doing amazing things as well. And yeah, I think if we all just keep doing what we're doing, like more people will know what's going on in Lincoln, and maybe people will even come visit Lincoln to see what's going on, which would be awesome. So,
you were touching a little bit about failures and what that leads us to moving forward, and ironically, me and Cain were kind of talking about that before the show today, weren't we, Cain?
Oh.
And we started this, almost 2 years ago. We've learned that, we just get a little bit better every time. And
that's right.
And, without that, we wouldn't even be here. And so always thanks to my hosts for doing what we do, captain of the ship, Mr. Cain Stevens, and Scott, thanks so much for coming on Scratch the Vinyl today.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to hang out with you all.
Yeah, this was a blast, Scott. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It was so refreshing to talk to you. Musical, intellectual. I just, man, I don't know. Sometimes I just get kind of like in a lull when it comes to like my thinking, and just talking to you was so refreshing to me. I want to give myself a hug. So maybe I'll come give you a hug at the library. I'm definitely going to come visit you probably sometime this week.
Awesome.
Just check everything out. And yeah, I mean, I'll come talk to you in person, but thank you so much for coming on our show, man.
Hooray. Thanks so much, everybody.
All right, everybody. Well, we did it again. We supplied you guys with yet another awesome interview, solely on the guest, of course. We tried, right? But you guys keep coming back every single week. We appreciate everybody who's on this journey with us, and tune in next week for another awesome episode. And I'm telling you, we got more on the way, everybody. Big interviews coming up. So stick around. We'll see you guys. Catch you on the flip side here on
Scratch the Vinyl.